get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down. Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down.
Shout out Young Swish.
Thank you guys for tuning in to our first Bengals post-game recap show of the season, presented by the Right Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright. Joined by my guy, as always, 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗦𝗢𝗪. A lot of stuff to get into. But before we do, make sure you guys do us a huge favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live, when we upload content to the YouTube channel. You know, one thing I want to talk about here, man, Daniel, is the Bengals just beat the Cleveland Browns. It was ugly, right? It was ugly. And we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of the game. But it was a game. It was a victory that they needed. It was the way that they sort of needed to start the season. They needed to start the season with a victory. And namely, so they needed to start the season with a divisional victory. Daniel, I've got a lot to say about this game, man. I've got some bright spots, some things I want to talk about. I've also got some lowlights that I want to talk about. I want to get your initial takeaways of the game. Make sure you guys drop your comments in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer as many questions as we possibly can as we go through the game. We talk about the highs, the lows, the whole 9 yards. But Daniel, what are your thoughts on this game so far?
Yeah, man. I mean, first off, very fun, exciting game. Brandon Bell said 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗓 won my first parlay of the season. Congrats.
Congratulations on
that. Man, the first takeaway before we get into it, like you said, it's a win. Come week 16, come week 17, we're not going to care how the Bengals won this game. This is a win on the record, and that is the first thing, because this very easily could have been a loss. And how I put this, Malik, I don't think the Bengals won this game. I think the Browns lost this game. I think the Browns had multiple opportunities to have this game. You look at what Joe Flacco did. I thought Joe Flacco put them in the best possible position to win. And I think the Browns fumbled it away. And that's, you know, the biggest takeaway, like I said, is you have a long season and there's a lot that this Bengals team has to improve. But the first bright spot, if we were to talk about it, I think the defense was a bright spot, right? At least from my expectation and the vibe that was heading into the season was, holy shit, this defense looks the exact same as it did last year. The defense that showed up today did not look the same as last year. We saw much better play from certain spots, whether it was the defensive line, whether it was even the linebacker unit at some point. This was a much better performance on the defense side than I expected that we would be coming out of week 1 with. So that's the first overarching theme, was they've got something to work with, right? Albeit they don't have the most talented defense. They don't have, you know, the highest paid defense in the league. They don't have the highest draft picks in the league on the defensive side, but they have a bunch of talented guys. There's something you can work with. And I don't think you have to go out and make a trade this season. I do think that this defense has the capabilities to keep you in games and win games, very similar to what we saw when the Bengals went on that Super Bowl run. The timely turnovers, that is how this Bengals defense is going to win. I don't expect them ever to look like a dominant defense. I don't expect them ever to, you know, always hold a team to 10+ points. But that was the biggest bright spot I thought was, hey, preseason, I was like, man, here we go again, right? Same exact thing as last year. But I was subtly impressed by the overall defense. Like I said, you put up 16 points, timely turnovers, and that was definitely the immediate takeaway. But like I said, Bengals fans, you got to be happy that there's at least a win on the record, because 1-11, Zach Taylor in the first 2 games of the season, that is not a fluke. That is something that has that's been on his back the past 5 years. And at points today, it looked like maybe it was going to be another 0-1 start, but you got that out of the way, and you can put this in the past, you know, and hopefully grow from this. But I don't know if we fully want to dive into some of my favorites, you know.
Yeah, well, one thing before you even do that, I just want to say, like, that was an ugly victory, right? But, you know, I'm not, you guys know, man, I'm not one to make excuses for this team at all, but sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to have ugly victories. And, you know, week 1, it's difficult for you. Look around the scores around the entire league, unless you're the Chargers and Chiefs who showed limited defense, you're going to have these slow starts for most of the team. Now, I'm going to get into the Bengals offense. I'm going to get into some of the egregious play calling in the second half as well, how Chase Brown disappeared. But what I will say is last season, the Bengals had so many ugly losses. They had so many losses that looked very similar to the victory that took place today. And we were all walking around with our head held, low. One note I want to make is, and this isn't a flex at all, but I remember we were talking with the TWSN analyst, Bill Sparks, and he said, in one-score games, I'm going to take Kevin Stefanski over Zach Taylor. All right. Now, by no means is this a Zach Taylor, prop up, if you will. But the Bengals found a way to win a tight game. And these were the type of games that they weren't finding a way to win last season. That's the difference in teams that make the playoffs versus teams that don't. You have to be able to win one-score games in the National Football League, especially against divisional rivals. Make no mistake about it. I have a lot of respect for that Cleveland Browns defense. And it seems like this Bengals offense shows a lot more respect to that Cleveland defense than maybe, we think they should, because you think about the high-powered offense. I'm going to be honest with you. Well, won the Bengals the game today because T. Higgins wasn't being targeted as much. Jamar Chase wasn't being targeted as much. And maybe that's the coverage, maybe that's coverage due to Greg Newsome and Denzel Ward and the great job that they did. But one thing that I really, really want to talk about, man, and I'm sure we're going to get into this in the show, is I really want to highlight the production from the tight end position. Yeah. Noah Fant showed up in a big way today, right? If it wasn't for that, who knows how this score looks? We're going to dive into all of this. I guess where we can start off, Daniel, is what did you think of Noah Fant's debut with the Cincinnati Bengals, right? 4 receptions, 26 yards, 1 touchdown. What were your thoughts on that?
I was very, very, very happy with it. And you look at this entire tight end room. Mike Gesicki's always been one. He hasn't really done great against the Browns in the past. I mean, last year he wasn't a big part of the focal point. And I'm very impressed because I think, like I said, this is one of the best tight end rooms in the entire NFL, right? They just went against Njoku, Harold Fannin. Props to both of them. I thought Harold Fannin burst onto the scene as a rookie. But to have the flexibility of a Drew Sample who played a huge role in many of these, early on in the rushing game, but to have the flexibility to have Mike Gesicki in the slot and then to have Noah Fant lined up as your inline tight end, it just gives you so much, flexibility to do many different things because you've got to worry about Gesicki, you got to worry about Fant. And I thought the play call, that was probably my favorite play call the entire game, on the goal line, the touchdown pass to the Noah Fant, because the Bengals were, forcing the ball down the throats, run the ball, and you have Noah Fant sneak out. Yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. And that's something you can't necessarily do if you have a Drew Sample in there, but it's the same thing to where Tanner Hudson has had success doing that, but Noah Fant is a different level of receiver. And I was very, very impressed. And I think this is something where, Malik, this is going to be not the backbone, but it's the safety net for the Bengals passing unit. I think the fact that you have Noah Fant, you have Mike Gesicki, you have Drew Sample, that is a rock solid core. And I was very impressed for his first game of the season to be targeted 5 times. I thought it showed also that Joe Burrow trusts him and he trusts his tight ends. And I think, like I said, it is a safety net, and it is something where if you guys thought that this was a big Noah Fant game, if you thought this was a big tight end game, I promise you wait till this Bengals offense opens up, because they were targeted a grand total of 6 times or 7 times the tight ends. I would not be shocked if that number is 10 plus every single game. So yeah. I was very impressed, and Noah Fant's going to have a huge role with the Bengals this season.
Keeping on the positive momentum before we keep it going, I look at it. Chase Brown, man. Chase Brown looked like the clear-cut running back for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah.
I look at it and I say, I'm looking at that game, man, to be honest with you, and I'm saying that guy was feasting in the first half. The reason why the Bengals went away from him in the second half ceases to it amazes me. I have no understanding why you chose to go away from him. And if you notice, Joe Burrow was working with clean pockets when you were having a more balanced game plan. But for some reason, I don't have the answer to it. Maybe you do. Joe Burrow, the Cincinnati Bengals decided, hey, you know what? We're going to take the ball out of Chase Brown's hands. We're going to have Joe Burrow drop back because we don't have a capable running back there. And that couldn't be any further from the truth. So I don't know why that was the game plan in the second half, as opposed to the first half when they said, you know what, we're going to take the pressure off of our offensive line, off of Joe Burrow. It looked a lot cleaner, but the more and more the Bengals, drop back in the pocket, and you started to see guys like Isaiah McGuire, guys like Myles Garrett start to feast. What were your thoughts on the usage in the first half of Chase Brown versus the second half?
So the stat I have, Malik, and I feel like this is a broken record from last season, but there were 6 Bengal drives in the second half. 5 of them, Malik, were 3-and-outs. 5 3-and-outs in the second half. So you put together one drive that ended in a field goal. The rest of those were 3-and-outs. That's a huge, huge, huge problem with this Bengals offense. But when we talk about the rushing attack, and I know people can say, well, Chase Brown only rushed for 2 yards a carry. It wasn't about that, right? Because they ran the ball a lot on the goal line. They ran it in short yardage. It's the fact that you just went away from it. And I felt like there was a lack of creativity in the run game, right? I didn't see much creativity. You put Jamar Chase in motion once, I thought was nice, but you didn't really set that up to anything. But I agree with you. I think the overall creativity and just the lack of usage in the run game in the second half really killed the Bengals, because this felt kind of vanilla, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to the entire offense, especially the second half, I didn't see a whole lot of diversions. I didn't see much. It was, hey, let Joe Burrow drop back, and that's what's really screwed you over. So I felt like the utilization of Chase Brown, it was a misutilization in the second half, especially 0 screens for him in the second half. That's another thing where every single time I felt like last year when Chase Brown had a screen, it built up positive yardage, and there just wasn't enough of that. So like I said, 5 3-and-outs in the second half is not a recipe for success. But like I said, shout out to Chase Brown. I thought him on the goal line was fantastic. His 1 touchdown run, went to the right, bounced back, scored the touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
He showed why he is a top 15-ish running back in the NFL. And I've got high hopes for him, but
he's got to get the touches, right?
Yes.
You can have all the talent in the world.
Yes.
I just feel like, I understand, with all due respect, how talented this Browns defense is. I just think that when you look at, I think when you look at how many talented players you have on this Bengals offense, to only put up as little amount of points, what they won the game, 17-16, to only put up 17 points was a little disappointing. You just expect more. I expected more. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. But I also thought that the coaching staff didn't do a good enough job of trying to put them in positions to win. We hope that kind of gets corrected. I'm sure there's going to be more we're going to discuss about that from State of the Jungle and throughout the week, obviously on tomorrow's morning show as well. I'm curious to see what the 30 for 30 sorry, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The game, the entire game footage looks like. The interior of the offensive line, Dylan Fairchild looks the part. I thought Lucas Patrick, for as much flack as he got from myself, from Daniel, from the entire State of the Jungle crew, from everybody, I thought he looked pretty good when he was in there, albeit Joe Burrow only passed the ball about 14, 15 times in the first half. Dalton Risner had to come in, obviously, with Lucas Patrick dealing with a lower leg injury. We hope that's not indicative of, we hope that it's nothing serious and it's going to cause him to miss the season or even an extended amount of time. But Dalton Risner came in, and I thought he did a fantastic job. What were your thoughts on the interior of the offensive line?
Yeah, so the interior of the offensive line for me, it was great up until the end. Like, Mason Graham was literally invisible, right? He was invisible for 3.5 quarters until that fourth quarter. So I thought they played well. I really did. And like I said, I don't think people will give them flack for the rushing attack, because I already see people saying, well, Brown only had 2 yards per carry. I don't know if a lot of that was on the interior of the offensive line. I thought they played well up until the end. And if you give me 3.5 quarters, that's a huge bright spot for 2 new starters on your team. You have a rookie and you have a backup in Dalton Risner, who wasn't expected to play today. He was a backup today, and he slotted in, and that's the best possible production I think you can ask for. So it's a work in progress when you look at that final drive. But like I said, I'm not blaming this on the interior of the offensive line. I'm not coming out of this game, Malik, and saying Fairchild sucks or Risner sucks because the end. Yes, the offensive line looked poor at the end, but I personally think a lot of that is the play calling, and I think that's just the position you put this team in, especially in third and longs. You're dropping, you got 5 guys in protection. They're blitzing 5. It's one-on-one. First game of the season. This is something I can work with, and I think that this offensive line, they got the makings to be successful for the rest of the season. So I don't know if I've left a week 1 as happy or as at least settled with this offensive line, because there's stuff you can work with, and I'm happy with.
Well, props to Andrew Smith. He is the player of the game, the Cleveland Browns kicker. Missed an extra point, missed a field goal. You are the MVP of the game. You are why the Cincinnati Bengals are walking out of here 1-0. We greatly appreciate your services. Want to keep the conversation rolling. You know, it was crazy because I feel a little conflicted here. I was going to come into this half and I was going to talk about a little bit of concerns for the cornerbacks, right? Cam Taylor-Britt had a rough showing today. DJ Turner got beat on the same play twice, right? Where you stacked 2 receivers, one cuts inside. That was Jerry Jeudy. You just expect to see more. You expect to see more, but he saved himself with the timely interception that he came up with, right? Bounced around the Browns receiver's hands, and DJ Turner made a great break on the ball. We saw this Bengals defense flying around there today. Jordan Battle coming up with an interception off of a tip pass as well. Like, this is the type of turnovers that kind of, eluded them last season. It's what you were hoping to see from this Bengals defense. And what I always said was I thought that this Bengals defense would look a lot better, in week 3, week 4, week 5 versus how they looked week 1. I thought they showed some areas, some spots they could improve upon. I definitely think the pass rush showed up in spots. You want to see that a little bit more consistently, right? They did a good job holding Trey Hendrickson out of the game at points, but then he started to make his impact felt as well. I think coming up with a sack and a half, or maybe a half a sack each time. I don't know what the numbers break down to exactly, but I think that this Bengals defense started to put it together towards the end. I thought they did. Shamar Stewart, talking about some batted passes down from Shamar Stewart. How do you think this Bengals defense did overall? How do you think Al Golden fared in his debut as the new Bengals defensive coordinator?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag, but there's a lot of bright spots. I mean, we can literally go player by player. Like the secondary, Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner, there is concerns 1,000%. And I'm not gonna, sit up here and say like I'm super confident in them. There is serious concerns about them, but I'm also going to say Jerry Jeudy's a fantastic route runner. So is Cedric Tillman. So I thought that this was a much needed test, but that is going to be a huge problem or a huge focal point, because I think opposing teams, they're going to look at that, and that's going to be a huge target. It's going to be the quick passes, but all around, I was very impressed. I mean, the linebacker unit, Logan Wilson, he impressed me today, right? There was obviously some concerns, but I thought he played phenomenal, because the consensus, even from me, was, man, he's slowing down. He doesn't got the same juice, but I mean, we're talking about wrapping up tackles. We're talking about playing with an imposing will. Him and Demetrius Knight, I thought, set the tone, at least from a tackling standpoint. So that was I was very impressed with those two, because like I said, I head into this game expecting a little less from them, saying, man, these guys could get beat. But both those guys in the run game, both those guys barely missed any tackles. So I was very impressed with the linebacking duo from that standpoint. And Malik, from the defensive line, Shamar Stewart, if you look at the stat sheet, he had a donut, right? Not even a tackle, but this dude was making it, serious impact. He was making his presence felt, right, on the pass rush multiple times, driving the offensive lineman back. You got DeJuan Jones on the left side, 6'7" offensive line. Shamar showed his strength. So I think Shamar is going to be the guy, like we talked about. That is your guy opposite of Trey if you want a pass rush. So Shamar, I thought I was very impressed, at least from a rookie standpoint of, hey, week 2, week 3, week 4, get him in on third downs, get him in second and longs. That's where his value is going to be. But Malik, my player of the game on the defensive side, it's BJ Hill, man. I was pleasantly surprised with him, and this is why you brought him back, right? He wasn't necessarily a dominant force, but he was always around the ball. And I thought the interior of the offensive line for the Browns, I'm curious to see how the film looks. They didn't have an answer for him. Yeah, they didn't. And the interior defensive line, their job is, if Trey and Shamar corral the quarterback into you, you've got to make a play. And I thought BJ Hill made 2 massive plays. And even early on in the game, he had a huge run stop on 3rd and short at the goal line. So BJ Hill, by far and away, I was extremely impressed with him. And I think that's a guy who we're going to be talking about for the rest of the season, saying, hey, if you want a pass rush from the interior, it might have to come from him. But There's a lot more. I mean,
Mhm.
even Joseph Asai kind of shocked me a little bit at
Really?
times from the pass rushing standpoint, but I thought he looked good. And even the new addition, TJ Slayton,
Oh, yeah.
man,
TJ Slayton made a lot of plays.
like,
I think he had 2 or 3 pressures, something like that.
bro, like I'm kind of confident in Slayton and BJ Hill right now. I'm saying,
Chris
hey,
Jenkins had
yeah.
a big stop as well.
Mhm.
Chris Jenkins flashed when he got his time out there. Listen, I think that you saw the makings of what this defensive line could be. You definitely haven't. But I think the biggest takeaway, the biggest switch from last season to this season, and how they started was the takeaways that the Bengals defense were able to force. Right. I thought Logan Wilson was flying around the football field. I thought Demetrius Knight was flying around the football field. Warren Burks left a little bit to be desired out there, but I think that this linebacker unit could be a strength. As the season continues to progress and as we continue to go through it, I think it definitely could be. Now, if we have to talk about some of the negatives, because we are going to talk about the negatives, right? There were negatives, like in any NFL game. There's never going to always be just positive. And I agree with you, Malcolm. He says I saw Pennell make a couple of plays. He did. There's a reason why he was active. Situational coaching. Let's talk about that. Situational coaching was a big red flag today, right? Not trying to be Mr. Negative, but we do want to talk about everything. Again, while you guys are here, drop your questions, drop even your comments down in the comment section. We're going to get to those on the show. I promise you, because we want to talk it all through with you. That's why we're doing this show, so you guys can feel included and you guys are a part of the conversation here. But the situational coaching was poor, right? The burning of the timeouts. It seems like, you weren't able to get the play calls into Joe Burrow on time. Maybe the offense just wasn't as organized as we expect. The offense sort of has these slow starts, right? And kind of gelling everything out, because even though you played in the preseason, you're playing a full game. You have to adjust on the fly. There's so many different things that you have to do. Those are the things that you're hoping to see improve. But from Zac Taylor being coach of this team now for as long as he's been, those are little things that you weren't expecting to see down the stretch, right? You're expecting Zac Taylor to have a game plan and also be able to execute it, not flawlessly, because you're going to have hiccups, you're going to have issues. But the timeout, for instance, right after the kickoff, like it's just like, it's like, what are we doing here? So these are the things that you want to see improved upon. There's things that need to be improved upon. Before Daniel gives his take, if you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate you. But drop your comments down in the comment section. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, Malik, and I saw this comment a couple of times saying, hey, well, teams put out, or the Browns put out the game plan or the blueprint to beat the Bengals. I don't think so. This is what the Browns do, right? And I think the blueprint to beat them, or the way the Browns did on defense, you have to have 2 cornerbacks on the outside that you trust.
Yeah.
And I don't see many teams that got that. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome. This is something every single time the Bengals have played the Browns. Obviously, last year, Jamar Chase had a massive game, and the Bengals can get there. So I don't expect this to be the same when the Bengals face them again. But the blueprint is very difficult to beat the Bengals. And I think this is a divisional matchup. This is 2 teams that know each other. This is a team that has arguably the best pass rusher in the NFL, and Myles Garrett. It is going to be tough to replicate this. And I think when you look at the next couple games, I think that we're not just going to see a 17-point game. I think this was a gritty win. But to say that there is the blueprint to beat the Bengals, I think that this is probably the worst that you're probably going to see the Bengals or offense look for at least the beginning of the season, because you got the Jaguars, you got the Vikings, 2 teams that don't have star number 1 cornerbacks like a Denzel Ward. So I'm not really shocked, because like I said, I saw some people say, well, Jamar didn't get involved. I'm not shocked about Jamar's numbers. Like, hey, I'm not concerned. Like, that dude is a star. That dude is a superstar. So like I said, I'm not too overly concerned about saying, hey, Jamar and T didn't get as involved. But like you said, I think the situational coaching, Malik, that was the biggest concern for me, because as much as we can talk about, this was a win. This was a game. It felt very similar to multiple games last year, saying, hey, it's coming down the wire. The ball was not in your hands at the end of the game. It was in Joe Flacco's hands. It was in the opposing team's hands. And that is something we've seen time and time again, where, hey, 3 and outs. When you have a lead, the Bengals have struggled to maintain a lead at times, because, like you said, they haven't established a rushing game. So that's my concern is, hey, can Zac Taylor play with a lead? Do they know how to sustain drives when you are up by 7 points? Because you had a grand total of 3 points in the second half. And I think that this is
You expect more.
Yes.
You expect more. I understand it's AFC North game. You know, we'll see what happens. But Daniel, I want to make sure that we get to some questions here.
Yeah.
So the floor is yours, my man. Let's
Okay.
get to some questions, get some comments. I want to hear from the people. Let us know what you guys think. Sound off in the comment section. What were your thoughts on this performance? Oh, by the way, since we brought up situational coaching, how about that horrendous decision to take a penalty? Right now, I get it. It paid off in a victory still, but that was bad coaching. To take a penalty when you decide you're trying to get the Browns to jump offside, right? It's at the 2-minute warning hits. You're trying to get them to jump off sides. It's clearly not working. You take a penalty and force a punt. Like you're forced to punt regardless, but you had no intentions on actually going for it, but you punted the ball, but you took a penalty to bounce it back up. I don't know. For me, it's like, okay, what could go wrong, right? That's analyzing weighing the positives and the negatives, the whole 9 yards. To be honest with you, this Bengals team needed a little bit of luck to bounce their way because this was stuff that did not bounce their way last season. There were many missed field goals. There were shank punt. Like there was a lot that kind of went into things last season that resulted in the Bengals missing the playoffs with 9 wins on the season and having to rattle off wins towards the end of the year. But they started off with a victory. That was the end goal. They started off with a victory. They overcame bad situational coaching today. That's what this team did. And if you want to be some of the one of the playoff teams, one of the teams that are in there for champions, you have to overcome shit sometimes to get to where you want to go. But Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. It was a terrible mismanagement, even for that part. I mean, sure, you can make the argument that, oh, well, they got the touchback or they pinned them anyways. It's the process, right? That, hey, you weren't going to go for it and you pinned yourself back 5 more yards. And it was just leaving the Browns with time. And then even before that, you went 3 and out and gave them the ball back. People forget, yes, you got a turnover. Malik, the ball, it was in their hands and you went 3 and out. So I think the concern with this game, it is a Zach Taylor concern because what happens when they go up against the better head coaches? And
it felt like when they played the Cleveland Browns, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in the comment section, because you guys watched the same game that we did. It feels like when they take on the Cleveland Browns, there's a little bit of overthinking that takes place. They don't play the Browns with the same confidence they play other teams. And maybe it's because they overanalyze. Maybe it's a team in their division. They're like, holy shit, we know what the Browns can do. But I'm sorry, you guys just spent over $200 million on Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and you're just not going to give those guys shots. You're not going to just drive up opportunities for them. And I understand, defense, the defense of the Browns is very, very tough. But at some point, I'm going to trust the Triple Crown winner. At some point, I'm going to give him opportunities. And part of that is on Burrow as well. But the fact of the matter is, that's something that you're hoping to see improve. That's something that the Bengals need to improve. You need to get the most out of Jamar Chase, out of T. Higgins. You need to get the most out of the weapons on the football field. That's all I think about that. What are your thoughts? Dan, well, what are your thoughts on that? Although I know what your thoughts on that, but also let's get to some questions.
For sure. Yeah, it's disappointing to see at times, especially with the end of the game and how it was mismanaged. But we had, some of these comments. Once again, drop your comments down below. Cornell Hope was saying their tight ends were killing us. And a couple of people were asking, why do tight ends constantly kill the Bengals? First off, I think that those two are very talented tight ends, Njoku and, obviously the rookie. But you just got to tackle as well as you've got to have somebody that you're confident in covering tight ends. And I think that these guys are just young as well. Jordan Battle had a play. It was the third down where Joe Flacco rolled out to the right and, he was looking like he was going to run. Jordan Battle kind of got caught in the middle, but that's something where you got to stick with your man. And I think this is still a young secondary, but you have to just get these guys more reps, and you just have to focus on that man-to-man because you are going to be playing some fantastic tight ends in the near future. So I don't know if this is something that's going to necessarily go away, but at the same time, teams are going to target the tight ends, especially with how the Bengals are playing, especially late in games when the Bengals play the drop coverage. It's like, hey, they're just allowing the tight ends to go underneath, and then you have Logan Wilson make the tackle. So I do think that's definitely a problem the Bengals have to solve. But Malcolm W said, how do we solve the glaring holes that we have at cornerback? For me, I think you have one bright spot at least. You have Dax Hill. I thought Dax Hill played very well. I thought that he obviously missed, I believe it was 2 tackles. But outside of that, I'm confident he looked good from, his injury standpoint. He played in the slot. He covered many different guys, even covered the tight end at times. I was happy with Dax Hill, but the cornerbacks, you just got to play these guys. And I think the way you do it is you have to get pressure. And that's the only way I think that you can solve it right away is get pressure and see where the chips fall. Because right now you got 𝗕𝗘𝗪, you got DJ Turner. I don't know if there's another solution. Maybe you look at an Asante Samuel Jr. Maybe you do that later in the season. That's a question I would answer past week 4, but
there's just a level of confidence you have to play with at the cornerback spot. You just need to, right there. I don't think there's any getting around that or even deflecting or moving around that. This is something that happened when Lou was the defense coordinator. You expect more out of the position. It seems to be a little bit of overthinking out there. And that's the thing about DJ Turner and 𝗕𝗘𝗪. The highs are very high. The lows are pretty low. And what I mean by that is you have two cornerbacks that are extremely ultra aggressive, that are ball hawks, that are always looking to make plays on the ball. You're going to give up plays. There's a reason why they were drafted where they were drafted. And I mean that with all due respect. Not everybody's going to be a Pat Surtain, right? A Jair Alexander and all these other cornerbacks in the National Football League. But, even though they might not be necessarily sticky cover guys, they will attack the ball. If you give them opportunities to make a play on the ball, they will look to make plays on the ball. And I think that's the one thing I will say about this Bengals secondary. I think the most technical corner that the Bengals have on this team is Dax Hill, maybe even Josh Newton. Who knows? But I definitely think that, the reason why DJ Turner is out there, I think the reason why 𝗕𝗘𝗪 is out there is because their ability to make big plays, big timely plays too. And I think that's what this Bengals defense sort of they need better coverage, respectfully, but they also need to have guys out there that have the ability to take the ball away. That is what you're looking for, respectfully.
For sure. Yeah. And even looking at that, like DJ Turner, I think is a perfect case to where he was getting cooked, man. He was, and it was it was the quick slants. It was the short passing game. It was the 3rd and shorts. And then he comes up and he makes a big time play. So I think, like you said, confidence is a huge thing. And on the DJ Turner front, the fact that he had that interception at the end of the game, you hope that gives him confidence heading into the next couple of weeks with some fantastic wide receivers. Yeah. So we got a question from Kevin K. Yeah. He was talking about the Zac Taylor offense in general. He said, I don't get why Zac's offense is bland as hell until like week 5 every year. Want a fast start? Show us something different. Show us new. Look at the first drive of the game. I agree with you. And I think that that's something where it is very vanilla-esque. And it's almost like, you're just allowing Joe Burrow to kind of cook, but there's not a whole lot of misdirection. There's not a whole lot of, different looks. And whether that's purposeful for Zac Taylor or whether they're just putting something vanilla because they don't want to go deep into their bag, I don't know, but I agree with you. You can't head into a game with a vanilla-esque, play style and expect something different. So I definitely agree with you. And I think that this is a fair point because we see it time and time again. Yeah. The offense at the end of the season tends to look a whole lot different than it does at the beginning of the season. So I totally agree with you. Bogey255 said, I will say Zac took, name. I love Great that. I will say Zac took more accountability during the post game than usual. That gives a glimmer of accountability. Quicker positive change. My eggs are in Joe's basket to take the game over, though. I completely agree with you. But even at the end of the game, you can't put yourself in that position because we saw what happened when the defense got pressures. Joe, he took 2 bad sacks, and that was something where you've got to have a different play call. And it's even on Joe Burrow. Those are 2 terrible sacks. What's so
somebody Jimmy Boy Productions said
what did he say?
He said, I can't wait to hear those in his Zac Taylor's press conference. That's so funny. That's like an inside joke that me and Daniel have. It's kind of funny, but sorry, I had to that made me laugh. That was great. Jimmy Boy Productions, you win comment of the day for sure. For sure. Let's get to a few more questions before we get out of here. Because we have the morning show live tomorrow. Remember, guys, the sit down morning show is live Monday, Thursday, and Friday. Every Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 10:30 a.m. as we break down what happened around the league, as we break down Bengals football. We break down so much in sports. And this is a big week, obviously, week 2 of the NFL. We'll be talking about it. Even talking about Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford happening this upcoming week. But yeah, make sure you guys are following, you subscribe so you guys can spend your mornings with us. Let's get to some more questions.
We had Caden said, I think the offensive line were the biggest losers today. They keep preventing Burrow from scoring more because he can't be protecting for more than 2 to 3 seconds. I don't necessarily fully agree with the offensive line standpoint because I thought that, there were some bright spots, but I do agree that at the end of the game, especially, they they got cooked at the end of the game, especially that one drive where Joe Burrow took 2 sacks. But I also think when we talk about the offensive line, a lot of that I think comes from the play calling, because with that in mind, the defensive line wasn't concerned about screens. They weren't concerned about runs at the end of the game. It was, hey, I'm going to pin my ears back and I'm going to rush. And I think you have to, like you say, Malik, you got to make them earn the right to rush the passer. And that's something where if Zach Taylor and Dan Pitcher, if they can come up with more screens, come up with more quick passing game, because I didn't see that. You look at the opposing side, Joe Flacco, it seemed like every play, quick pass, quick pass, quick pass. Even you look at what Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs just did. Mahomes looked terrible at times, but the second half was, hey, catch the ball, release. And that is a play calling design. So I thought the offensive line played fine. I personally wouldn't be too concerned heading into week 2 about that.
Let's get to 2 more questions. Somebody asked a great question down in the comment. It's like 224K all day. This is, what is a positive and negative hot take from the game? Daniel, I'll start with you.
A positive and negative hot take. I think a positive hot take, I would say, is I think that Jamar Stewart solidifies himself as the starting edge rusher very, very quickly. I think it could be, or maybe not even starter, but I think he is the main guy. And I agree with, I think that this
opposite
dude,
of Trey Hendrickson, you're saying.
Yeah, opposite of Trey Hendrickson. I think that he could surprise some people in the stat sheet, over the course of the season. So I think he is clearly, for me, going to be the second highest sack getter for the Cincinnati Bengals this season, just because of the bright spots he showed. And a low light, I would say, or a loser. If I have to pick one, I think, and maybe this is a hot take later in the season, but maybe the Bengals do go out and try to get another cornerback later in the season. I think that the way it's trending right now, at least for me, heading into the playoffs, I'm projecting in 3 months, but I think that there's a possibility where you need some more depth, or you need another guy opposite, outside of a Dax Hill. And I think that was the biggest glaring question mark, was Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner. So I wouldn't be shocked at some point if they reach into the free agency pool.
I think a glaring hot take, if I'm making a really, really burning, scorching hot take, I have to say, and I might get heat for this, but I'll say this. I think that the interior of the offensive line of the Bengals wasn't the issue today. I think that when you're going up against Myles Garrett, right, and Jim Schwartz, who's one of the best defense coordinators in football, you're always going to be faced with so many different twists and stunts, and you have to just adjust on the fly. I thought Dylan Fairchild, I thought Lucas Patrick, and I thought Dalton Reisner answered the call. There was one play where Dalton Reisner got blew up pretty bad. I personally think this interior of the offensive line was actually a bright spot. I thought that Orlando Brown Jr. struggled on edge. That was expected going against Myles Garrett. That is a tough matchup 1-on-1. But I think the best thing to say is, I don't know if y'all saw, but it seemed like the Bengals were using less personnel to help the edges block. I mean, the offensive tackles block. And it seemed like there was a lot of guys kind of being left on the island. I thought the communication on the offensive line was better in the first half. And I think in large part that happened because the Bengals had a balanced game plan. I think the Bengals had a balanced game plan in the first half, and they were allowing Chase Brown to get the ball. But, that's just my thought process. I thought that the interior of the offensive line was not the issue. I thought the interior of the offensive line is actually going to be a bright spot, and I think this might be the best interior offensive line the Bengals Joe Burrow's had in his career. I think if the negative, I would say the low light is, if I'm a hot take negative, if I'm sorry, guys, it's just myself speaking to the mic. I apologize. I think the negative hot take that I would have is, I hate to keep beating up on Zach Taylor. You just think that the management, the situational coaching, the situational game management just improves. But again, that's the easy thing. That's low hanging fruit. That's what you would want to. That's easy to say. I would just say the usage of trusting the low light. I'll say Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow could have did a better job of targeting his weapons. Yep. I thought so. I thought that there were some missed opportunities out there, and it's easy for me to say that right now without the game footage coming out. But I thought that when watching that game in real time, I thought that there were some opportunities to dump it off to some other guys. I thought there was a little bit of holding onto the ball, a little bit too much going on. But again, Joe always kind of starts slow like this.
Yes,
and
he
then kind of
does.
just gets it going. It's a weird thing, man. It's a weird thing. And then it's like it'd be easy to kind of pinpoint that on Zach Taylor, but I also feel like sometimes Joe kind of just feeds into why Zach might call the game the way he does.
Mhm.
It's like there's a lack of confidence against Cleveland. Like there was that one play where he was holding the ball super long, and it was like, all right, dump it off to the running back. He's right there in the flat. Dump it off to the running back, and he did at the last second, and it resulted in nothing. Chase Brown, I think he got maybe a yard or two out of it, but it was like, come on, dude. Like you were you were the most hit quarterback in the National Football League last year, and it's easy to blame your offensive line at points and times, but I think also at points you put them in a bad spot as well. Again, that's what some of the greats are going to do. That's what's going to come with Joe Burrow being a quarterback. He's going to hold on to the ball. He's going to be looking to make a play, but you just would. A guy that has had durability issues, whether it be from the ACL, and again, I hate to say that's durability because like that's a freak injury or the wrist injury. You just would rather see him make smarter plays out there. It was almost like the preseason game when he drops back, catches the ball, rolls out in the back, and all that kind of stuff like that. Acts crazy, and it's like, dude, it's a preseason game. Just throw the ball away. So it's like, I don't know. I just think that there needs to be smarter quarterback play, being locked in, dialed in at all times. That's my hot take.
For sure. I agree with you. And I think that you rarely hear people, at least from the Bengals, criticize Joe Burrow. And I think it's a fair criticism. I mean, he has started off slow. So I totally agree. I guess one more question. Somebody was talking about the defense, were they good today or were they lucky? I think a little bit of both, but you need the luck, right? You have to have luck at certain points in the NFL. You look at all these other teams, you got luck, but you have to give them credit where credit is due. They held this team to 16 points. Whatever we say, that is the number. 16 points were scored from the Cleveland Browns today. And as a whole, if you go back to where we were with the Bengals last year at multiple points, this is a far better spot, in my opinion, than where they were before. So I think it's a little bit of both, good or lucky, but the bright spots were definitely bright. One thing, Malik, real quick on the opposite side, just as we're talking about these other teams, I thought real quick, somebody talked about Carson Schwarzenegger. I thought that dude had a phenomenal game, and I would not be shocked if that dude wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. I thought he played very well, and I was very impressed with him. But I don't know if you want to get some more questions or not.
Well, I think we're good. We're gonna save some for tomorrow, on the morning show to talk about a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff we got to get into, but again, I want to make sure we are prepared and educated, and just there's a lot to dissect.
Yeah. They won.
They won. They did win. They did something that they needed to do, and that's start the season off. I don't want to say strong, but start the season off with a victory. Doesn't matter how it looked. It wasn't pretty, but the Bengals started the season off 1-0. And if you're hanging on any hope, they found a way to win, albeit they had some breaks go their way. I thought the defense made some timely stops. I think the defense did show up. I think it's hard to hold a team in the National Football League under 20 points, and this Bengals team did that today, and the Bengals found a way to win. But that all being said, make sure you guys join us tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. live for the morning show. Sit down, Malik Wright morning show. We've got a lot to discuss. We also have a big-time interview coming up this week on the channel with one of the players. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really, really excited about it, man. And we appreciate you guys rocking with us. We know there's a lot of places you guys could be, but we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We really, really do. And hopefully all Bengals fans are excited today. If you guys could do me a huge favor, throw 𝗬𝗧 in the chat, because the Bengals start the season off 1-0, and we're talking about a victory rather than a loss. There'll be more Bengals stuff to get into tomorrow on the morning show, as well as State of the Jungle on Wednesday. But until next time, 𝗬𝗧.
This is TWSN. You ain't heard about